ZKGM, everyone. Welcome to another Union Hall cast. For this week, I have the Lava and Neutron founders with me. So today is going to be like a real builder episode. I think it's going to get highly technical. I already see the t-shirt, Make Infra Great Again. So I think today it's going to be a nerd snipe for developers. I'm going to dive into that. So to be honest, I'll just let my guests introduce themselves first. Maybe if you could get a quick intro on Lava and the story of RPCs in Cosmos so far. That'd be great, and then we take it from there.
Definitely. Thank you so much, Karel, for inviting us on stage. It's an exciting time and Jim Magma to everyone. Just a small correction. I'm the founder of Magma Devs, and we are contributor to Lava Network.
Apologies.
But it's the community is getting bigger, and it's exciting days after Korea Blockchain Week and Singapore Token 49. Everyone when asking me why did you start building Lava, basically I'm always asking the follow-up question: do you know what's RPC? And if you think about interacting with the blockchain, the thing that are running under us all the time, and obviously we're developing text for that. So RPC is kind of the language for blockchains. It's a set of APIs that you can communicate with, and every chain has its own APIs. It's kind of a super critical layer that bringing users, application, wallets, exchanges, builders, AI agents today to interact with, read the request, read the data, and fetch back a transaction. But when we started 3 years ago, we realized that you need to run a node in order to get access. You need to use centralized providers. And the thought was like, how do we create a standard that benefits everyone, makes every application get access to any chain they want without thinking about the RPC, kind of making it, the equivalent in Web 2 as a TCP/IP or SSL, and pushing this revolution together forward. So we decided to build Lava as a vision to create access to any chain, and by making sure that every application receive not a single provider, but a list of different providers. And there is a off-chain component that allows the application to speak directly off-chain with the provider. And during this session, collecting the different parameters, the latency, availability, uptime, in order to score the provider. So next time a provider that brings best score, he basically received more service. That's in a nutshell. I can jump into a bit more later.
Yes, that's interesting. So, as initially when I years ago read about you guys first, I thought more like it's an Alchemy competitor, but it's really not that, right? It's more like a Cloudflare level like competitor almost, where you form your own like almost internet, right? Specifically to serve blockchain traffic.
You're so right, because the difference between how internet works and how blockchain works is every network in the blockchain is a silo. In order to access that, you need to run a node. Don't trust, verify. That was the original thing. But in the last cycle, this was not possible anymore, right? So this is when Alchemy showed its greatness, and Infura and QuickNode and other providers that came and say, you don't need to run your own nodes. Let us do this for you. But think about the chain that we are based on, like the Cosmos chain. How many different providers? And so not a single reputable provider can actually support that. Maybe it can support a handful of chains, like give access to dozens of chains, even 70 chains. But today, there are so many different chains. So how do you make sure that you don't speak with so many providers? This is how we started, by creating a orchestration layer or aggregation layer that aggregating those providers, make them compete for the service, and give them rewards based on the quality of service.
Very cool. And is this something that you guys use at Neutron as well, or something that you see value in for your builders?
I believe there's support for it. I don't like, I think we tend to run a lot of stuff just internally. Like we come from a team that, like before working on Neutron, like a lot of the initial contributors were at P2P. So we have a lot of experience like running that kind of infrastructure. So we kind of just inherited the practice of like, oh, we need a node, we'll just like spin it up, if that makes sense. So yeah, we haven't been like direct users as far as I know directly, but some of the applications in our ecosystems might be.
Okay, interesting. And maybe a good intermezzo to give a brief summary of Neutron and what you guys do, because coming from like the staking scene, right? Like P2P, that's also founded Lido, right? It's kind of like the same cluster of folks.
Allegedly. But yes, that's right. Like yes, we're related to both of these guys, teams, projects. Yeah, I guess the TLDR, and I'll try to be like short. The TLDR is like we spun out a couple of years ago to build an L1, like a blockchain that's like heavily optimized for DeFi and specifically to cater to yield-bearing assets better than any other network or ecosystem. And this is sort of like where I guess like that experience kind of like really serves us, because we've worked with these assets for like years at this point. And particularly we're focused right now on helping bring real yield on Bitcoin to market, because this is really where the largest gap in this like the market is. Ethereum and like Solana and all of the proof of stake assets are kind of convenient. They come pre-packaged with their own like yield sources. But when it comes to Bitcoin, I think like people have had a lot of more struggle like figuring out how to generate like yield in a way that's like not just inflation, in a way that's like sustainable, and how to package this and create an ecosystem of financial primitives that allow people to express their preferences in terms of risk rewards, right? So like if you're a degen, you don't want to just like get 0.1% from Aave on your Bitcoin. You want to get something like really meaningful, and you're willing to take on risk for this. While with Max BTC and like the Neutron ecosystem, you can get credibly like 30 to 50, maybe even more percent APR on your Bitcoin using leverage. So you're taking on risk, obviously, but it's real basically, and it's sustainable. Or if you're like a much more like institutional, like sort of like participants, you can lend, but because there are those like trades that people can take that are meaningful and valuable to them, there's actual demand for borrowing Bitcoin. And so like the lending rates that you would expect on this more conservative position are not like 0.1%, but like maybe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5% on a sustainable basis. So that's kind of like the TLDR, right? Like infrastructure for like yield bearing assets to go to market, and like for scaling like big trades on Bitcoin currently.
Yeah, very interesting. Because now Neutron, for how many years have you guys been on mainnet and live and kind of with this L1 specifically operating this product?
So we started building on Neutron in 2022, and we launched mainnet on the 10th of May 2023, if I remember correctly. So 2 years and some now.
Interesting. Yes, I'm very curious, because I get when you guys were building Neutron originally, was that at the height of the like L1 versus L2 debate or not yet? I'm kind of curious. Like,
I think not yet.
Not yet, indeed.
I think not yet, because basically it was, if I remember correctly, I believe that the timing was kind of like, so Terra just collapsed. We were in the last innings of the 2021 so like bull market. Ethereum had suffered a lot from like congestion, and like that was like definitely something that people were talking about a lot and had been talking about a lot. I think the L2s were starting to come out, but I don't think that they had grown to nearly the extent that they have. So like this cycle actually, and like the cycle that we're in right now, where it's like it's really then that like people started being like, oh, one, the L2s are eating the L1s, and then two, the L2s are eating Ethereum. And so like there was a bunch more conversation, I think, this cycle, especially in the first inning of it, where like a lot of these kind of like roll-ups started like really growing effectively. So
yeah. So it makes me then very curious is now that we're kind of like in the second inning of this cycle, is the evaluation like, do you believe that building an L1 originally helped you maybe get to market faster, or was it indeed like a lift you guys had to do? You already mentioned that like obviously like running nodes, etc., was kind of already an expertise that you guys had within the team, and so not that difficult perhaps. But I'm curious if it actually had like a meaningful effect on Neutron as a
Yeah, obviously. So the reality is like I think the worst reason to launch a chain is like to get a valuation premium. And I think that actually a lot of projects actually did that for that reason. And that's fine, right? Like, but it's a very poor reason, because down the line it will hamstring you. Because like, when you're running a chain, you need a ton of infrastructure, you need a ton of processes, and you need to take on a ton of overhead that you wouldn't have had as, an application on another network, especially a network that's like, for example, like Ethereum and Solana, like now have like pretty decent infrastructure set up, so you can rely on other people having built out like a bunch of the ecosystem, and that can be really powerful, right? Especially if you're building things that compose with the rest of that ecosystem. For example, if you're building a DEX and you have some innovation and you're able to bring that innovation to market on a shared execution environment, you should probably do this because it will allow you to effectively compete in a very large established segment of volume and potentially capture a big part of this, right? If we were able to, like, for example, an example of this in practice is if we were able to build Neutron on Solana, we would 100% do that, and we would be doing billions of dollars of volume a day, because the stuff that makes Neutron valuable is innovation that allows us to be more capital efficient than our competitors. And so being able to also tap into the distribution channels that exist on shared execution environments would be awesome, right? But obviously, the reason why we built Neutron in the first place is because there's a bunch of things that you can do that can give you these competitive advantages in the first place that just aren't possible to do on shared execution environment, right? Like what makes Neutron interesting as a project and valuable as a primitive is because it makes a ton of really opinionated decisions about how like transactions in blocks are ordered, about the consensus process, and like leveraging this for additional functionality like oracles, and puts that to the service of the DeFi ecosystem, if that makes sense, which is not something that Ethereum or Solana is likely ever going to do or want or be able to do effectively.
Yeah, so kind of what I think people refer to as purpose built, right? Do you guys bake in, for example, like Oracle updates in your consensus layer itself?
Yeah, that's right. So like every single block that the network produces, as part of like the dance that the validators do, they also retrieve the prices from all of the centralized exchanges, as well as like the leading like dexes like Radium, Uniswap, and such, and they attach those to their votes. And so what happens is that the validator, each node does the mean of all of the sources for each asset, and then the consensus process does the mean of all of the validators, right? So like even if one source or one validator is malicious or like misbehaving or something, that wouldn't actually affect the outcome much. And that allows us to have like a very low latency, very important primitive, first low latency, and then two, very robust oracle that we can then use to, for example, like market make very aggressively on the network, right? And have have as a result like really great prices for traders. Like on a few pools on Neutron, you're getting basically the same execution as on Binance, and this is because we have access to these primitives effectively. So like one, it's better prices for traders, like less losing money to slippage when you're like entering or exiting a trade, for example. And then two, because we have more information, we can build primitives that are more protective of LPs, right? For example, like traditional AMMs, it's kind of like you put money here, and then the pool broadcasts like the price at which you're offering to exchange assets, and traders can just stand by, wait until you're offering the wrong price, and just capture that difference and only trade against you when they're winning, right? And this is why like LPs lose money all the time. But because we have access to these additional primitives, we can build systems that are more aware of the conditions of the industry, and therefore only market make at prices where they know that they're offering quotes that are basically making profits, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes all sense. Do you guys agree on the Lava side with this? That indeed, like with I guess the clients you have that build their own chains, have their own stakes, do you kind of see that perhaps like the RPCs perform better, or the data that flows through it is better, or would you actually say the opposite? Like running an L1 is a massive pain, and people need to think about the
don't get me wrong, like it is a massive thing. I think you should only do it if there's a really, really strong reason for why it should be a chain rather than an app on whatever network. I'm not opinionated on that.
Yeah, no, I definitely second that. I think L1's application application chain, specific chains, right? They competing kind of on the liquidity instead of just, as Spade said, just going to Solana, enjoy the liquidity they already have. Speaking all the time with, I know the foundation is speak with the market makers and bringing them on board. In the recent days, it changed, but at the end of the day, it's all about the utility and how it flows back to the chain. What's the usage there? I'm not even saying I'm not even considering all the burden of talking to the different exchanges and stuff like that, the listing processes. So yeah, it's cost money. So, but by the end of the day, I think
just to double click on your point here, like just for information, I remember spending 8 months negotiating with Binance and such. So yes, I think this is a great point. Like, don't waste your time like talking to exchanges and such if you don't have to. Just like make things simpler for yourself. Focus on the product. Sorry, I interrupted though. Like, please go on.
No, that's definitely amplifying exactly this point. When you started designing what you want to build, do you want to build a chain or do you want to build do you want to solve a problem? I'm always quoting the founder of Waze that says, "Fall in love in the problem, not in the solution." Right? So if you want to do the problem and you want to tackle the problem, so just finding a way only just to make sure that you do the TGE and mainnet and have your own L1, maybe it's going to miss the point. But yeah, back to the journey I've seen that we're going to with Magma Devs. We started this decentralization piece that give access to dozens of chains. But I think the flipping point was last year when Fireblocks reach out to us and say, look, what you're doing with the RPC is amazing, but there is a piece of software that you build on the open source of Lava that's really interesting us. And in a nutshell, I'm not sure you've seen 2 months ago, but we were announcing together with Fireblocks that they implemented this piece that we call the smart router across hundreds and 200 chains that they have, basically rolling it out to all the chains they have. And this is where an idea that you have is getting feedback from the market. And at this point of time, if you're a good listener, you need to hammer on that and to double down on that exactly. And I think that's what we try to do. We launched it 2 months ago, the smart router. Basically, it's plug and play any RPC provider, not only the Lava RPC providers. And it kind of helps anyone that needs enterprise grade service to get access to the chains, to plug and play the different RPC that they're already using, whether they're using their own nodes, and make sure they have kind of yeah.
Wait, so that I understand properly, right? Is that like the third layer of abstraction, basically? So you have like, you have the blockchains, right? You have specific providers, like whatever validator is running a node, right? And then that node may be participating in the first layer, which is like Lava basically can aggregate all of these into one service that like people can tap into, and then it just routes to the right node based on like demand and like whatever, right? And then now you've also implemented one that allows like another layer that is routing between, let's say, Lava and then Infura and other providers and such that like the end client can does one integration point with this router, and then like the sort of like the traffic is routed through the entire system, basically. Is that the smart routing?
That's the smart routing. You
That's pretty cool.
And
okay, that's pretty sick.
Yeah, and like basically everyone who needs enterprise grade service, they're ending up with a lock-in contract with top providers. They are talking to fragmented users, fragmented node runners on nascent chains, right? Because Fireblocks need to support them. And we've seen that this hassle doesn't make sense. But on the other hand, not one of these provider will develop this layer that you call, which kind of load balancing all of them, right? We are the UN of provider, we say, even that the provider itself, not necessarily listed on Lava RPC, we still want to work with him, and we still want to give access to it through the smart router. And since then, we already implemented that with other exchanges, market makers, and top security chains. And we're gonna have more announcements on that soon. Sorry that I elaborated, but it's really like
No, I actually think it's really interesting. It kind of reminds me of it reminds me of two things. It reminds me of like the extent to which some founders went back in the days for like even stuff like electricity and such to create the market or to create the conditions for markets to exist, basically, which can be really interesting. And like here, what I think is interesting is that you guys are investing resources into building a system within which you're not like favoring your app norm like necessarily, but you're kind of like creating a distribution system that like everybody has an interest in like integrating and within which you can compete. So you're kind of like basically building a distribution channel that is like unopinionated, but so that you can compete into it. It reminds me actually of what kind of like validators working on implementing like a liquid staking protocol is actually kind of like very similar to this. So like I think like P2P and Chorus and whatever kind of like investing into helping launch Lido, which actually is kind of like competing with it and like competing with every single validator independently. It's kind of like actually a very similar thing in the sense that like it in the short term, if you're just thinking about your bag or something, like it's worse than just one incremental deal. But if you think about like the long-term direction of the industry and such, and if you think at scale, actually that's like a way better long-term distribution that you're helping secure by like helping build that pipeline effectively, if that makes sense. Is that like the right way to think about it?
Yeah, you mentioned liquid staking. You can think about solvers. There is kind of different analogies for that. But at the end of the day, as Carl said, we want to be the Cloudflare for crypto. So it doesn't matter if you call Fireblocks and you currently have a lock-in contract with 3-4 providers and you run your own nodes. The smart router layer basically plug and play into your backbone. And then you can see what the provider is actually bringing, what performance it has. If suddenly there is demand in some, South Africa or other, region that you don't usually go, you always have that 100% uptime. And if we can solve that, really, it can become a standard for the industry.
That's cool.
Yeah, my thoughts immediately go to if you are like sitting between the user and the data here. Does that mean that you become a threat for these MEV pipelines that exist, right? Because technically, like users query you guys for data, but potentially also submit transactions through your network, right? Is that a way for Lava to potentially grow and gain further revenue by competing on that space, or once again creating a distribution channel for parties to compete here?
Exactly. So it's another layer that we create on this open protocol, I can say, which helps that we build it on Cosmos, basically, and Tendermint, and it makes it very flexible. So the protocol built in a way that if I turn on the flag, I say I want to work only with Alchemy and QuickNode. I want to work only in a .SLA that bring me this minimum latency. I want to work only with providers that already providing to me MEV protection. So this is the base layer that we built, and on top of that, there is a marketplace. We're going to announce soon of integration with very reputable security companies that making real-time protection, that making monitoring. All of this can plug and play to the smart router.
Very, very cool. Yeah, we encountered this with Union a lot of issues with different RPC layers. I see in the comments one asking like, when is our Binance bridge going to get up again? That's literally an RPC node problem actually. With the latest Binance hard fork, they broke the get proof endpoint on the Aragon node implementation. And for people who are a bit more technically inclined, like get proof is used to like get Merkle inclusion proofs for historic transactions, and that feeds into like how we do bridging, how we do transfers. And get proof itself, it's actually notoriously like computationally expensive to execute, and really depends on like on the Ethereum side, the node implementation that you're running. Then the mid nodes are like better designed to handle this, and it's like
but I think this is why I think we are really complementary to what you're building, guys, right? Like in a nutshell, if you think about Galois, I don't know if I pronounced that correct, but I heard you speak about that. If it's kind of a you focus on the consensus verification, but at the same time You still need the low latency, the consistent reads. It's such a big thing that people don't even think about. So if I can open brackets here, I see many chains that we started doing this public RPC, and they're asking me about why the latency here is much better than the other one. I look at the error rate, and you see that 90% error rate for every 10 requests you send to this 9 is false. So not doubling, you are 9 times more time latency for this request. But nobody is looking at those metrics. Why? Because nobody really looked at the hood. Nobody cares about RPC until it fails. So I think this all of this layer of access need to revisit how we define in what is success.
Yeah, I think it's very much slept upon for end users when they think like, oh, a DEX is slow, a protocol is slow, a bridge is slow. They should identify like which part is slow in the stack here. We're also encountered it a lot because our relayer has to fetch like a relatively large amount of data, I'd have to say. So for us, actually, like I guess proving times for generating ZKP is like, depends on the machine, 12 to 6 seconds. Fetching data, retrying over RPCs until we finally have like all of the data that's necessary to generate the ZKP can range anywhere from like 200 milliseconds to 10 seconds of continuous retry and queuing, finding different nodes, etc. And it's funny, that's like still a problem in crypto that's like so unsolved, right? It's something where even now when like we saw Plasma launch and other stable chains launching, you almost see them like spend more time on like setting up the initial like physical infra, getting that up and running, and going, well, like indeed, like running an L1 is a lot of work because you have to do all these things. Then potentially like building the initial core product. Is there a reason why you think like protocols like Lava aren't as ubiquitous yet? Like we use it internally in our relayer, and we have you guys like as a fallback in our UI as well, so we route through it. But a certain reason why maybe developers still like reach for Alchemy first.
Yeah, I think it's a market education at the end of the day, right? Like Alchemy and our top providers educated the market that they have great developers love them, and at the end of the day, they do amazing service. They actually do very good service, but not all the time. And I think, in the last half a year, more and more foundations, more and more applications that need enterprise-grade service woke up to the fact that there is an alternative that's slowly becoming a standard. I always like to look at trends and metrics, and currently we see the adoption trends are just doubling on a day-to-day basis. So I'm very bullish on that. And again, we were focusing on the smart router, especially internally in Magma Devs. And now when I can tell you that one of the top 5 exchanges deployed the solution 2 weeks ago, and it took them a few hours for a crazy infrastructure. This is when it makes me even more bullish to provide it to more and more people in the industry.
Yeah, extremely cool. Now, one thing
I have a question for you guys.
Go ahead. Shoot.
Is, we were talking about like performance and latency and stuff. Is block time a meme?
So I don't think so, actually. I like smaller blocks which are faster versus big blocks that take longer. Because at least for me, writing my own like trading software free time and my own like little protocols, knowing something's like included and finalized and done, and I don't need to look back and get like really quick feedback on that. It's much nicer than maintaining software where I need to shoot off a transaction and potentially look back 30 seconds later, like did it actually land in or not? So that's my personal like developer preference.
That makes a lot of sense.
It's kind of, you kind of think about that as digital real estate, right? So user bids for the gas fees, and validators allocate that, right? I think when more adoption going to come, is going to matter more. But yeah, that's only my take.
I think I would.
Sorry, go ahead. Didn't mean to interrupt you.
Yeah. So I was asking the question because I think you guys made a really good point previously about the fact that, like, at the end of the day, what matters to the UX is not just the block time, it's actually the end-to-end transaction, right? It's like, okay, so like from me getting the data in front of my eyes to like pressing the buttons and like, the thing doing the full, so like, back and forth where it got confirmed and executed in the blockchain, and then I see the result of it. And like that can be like meaningfully inflated by, for example, like faulty RPCs or just like how the page loads and whatever, like, and you can really make the user experience like way more kind of like pleasant by just like optimizing for these things, even with a relatively slower blockchain. But I actually agree with you fully, Carol, in the sense that, we do a lot of stuff on the market making side and optimizing for like liquidity and stuff. And for most financial use cases, actually, like having more discrete, smaller, faster block time is actually huge because, for example, like when we had this product called Super Vaults on Neutron, right? What they do is basically, okay, there's the Neutron order book, they take liquidity and then they effectively replace like GSR and Jump and Wintermute and the big market makers, like they market make for you. But the goal is that they're trying to democratize not just market making itself, but also the profits of it, right? Because AMMs have already democratized like market making, but generally speaking, you're losing money. We're trying to do this in a way that's profitable, right? So the way that they do this is they're kind of like, they're using the oracle that we talked about at all times to like get the prices, right? And they're sort of like allocating liquidity, right? But there's still like this small time discrepancy between the time where the price on Binance was queried, right? So we got the information of like, this is the time, this is the price right now, and we can start doing things on chain around that price. But within, that small, less than a second difference between the time where you're interacting with that price and when it was on Binance, the price on Binance might have changed. And so we need to take into account that difference, that potential like statistical difference in our model, in our market making. And so that means that like the slower we are here, the more spreads we need to have in order to make sure that we're always winning. And so the worse the average execution that the user is getting, right? And so having the fastest possible chain allows us to like market make much more effectively, which is like beneficial to the users because they're getting better prices at the end of the day. So this is kind of like the fundamental layer. But actually where things, and especially like when you have an app chain and like things get really, really cool, is that like, you can only get like so much faster with a blockchain without like going for like, so like the roll-up architecture of like, oh, we actually just have one machine that is running everything. Because like obviously that's better from a latency perspective, but you're sacrificing a lot of the decentralization and such. So if you can't just constrain the limits of physics, what you can do is you can time travel instead. And this is what we're like about to release with the SuperVault stuff, which is that like, if you're quoting prices after they've occurred, there's that delta and stuff, and you have to adjust for it. But what about instead you confirm the trades first, right? Like, oh, I'm a user, I want to buy Bitcoin. Cool. I will guarantee to you that you will get the best possible price. You will get the Binance price basically, but you don't know yet what that price is. You have a great idea of it. You can simulate it or something, but it's not confirmed yet, which is already the case, right? When you're trading on an AMM or something, you get a simulation, but you actually don't get a commitment to the price that you're getting, right? Until you've actually signed. So as a user, you come in, you get the guarantee that you'll get the best price. And what happens is that we take all of the trades, we confirm them, then only do we get the price of the assets, and we deposit, like we sort of like put the liquidity around that price, and then we execute the trades against it. And so what we've done in this way is that like you fully resolve this entire like latency issue by enabling basically the market making pool, which is kind of like this decentralized, like socialized welfare thing, and like allowed it to basically like go back in time through custom transaction ordering in order to like be more efficient, if that makes sense.
Does that mean that you're already like processing part of, let's say, the user transactions during like the block production pipeline? You reserve like 1 second to create the block, and then like prices are coming in during that 1 second, and then let's say like the final 10% of a block being produced. That's then when you do like resolving the final prices to that part of the calculation, or is it between like multiple blocks when this happens?
Yeah, there's two ways to do this. Basically, like the simplest way is like you have a queue. So like block N, you just accept all of the transactions. Block like at the end of block N, you attach the votes on like the Oracle prices, and then at block N+1, you execute the vote like the trades based on the thing. So that's the slower way to do this. Way simpler. Like this is probably what the V1 is going to look like. The alternative is like you have this be part of the block production, whereby like you're able to so like execute the trades against the state that is computed based on the Oracle update that has happened as part of that same block. That's like more tricky to do, but that's also possible. That's what we're headed towards, if that makes sense.
But
Yeah.
but, Carol, like I think the idea behind the zero trust that you have in Union is also to eliminate the need for oracles, right? Multi-sig or centralized intermediate.
For bridge purposes, right? So only rely on data that comes from validators. I think my connection might be.
I can hear you fine.
Oh,
you can hear me?
Good.
Okay, good. Yeah, no, exactly. So the whole point is that like for bridging specifically, usually what you see right now, even with like layer 0 not having been hacked so far, is that still like 80% of the traffic is secured by technically like one oracle and a relayer. So 2 out of 2. Yeah, 2 out of 2 if you look at it that way. And obviously that's like just risky for user funds. That's kind of like I feel also risky from specifically like what happens if like US regulation changes or something like that, right? Layer 0, I'm not sure like exactly where they're based, like US founders, right? And within it, like we kind of like build blockchains and we're building crypto specifically so that we like are not susceptible to that, right? That there's no like plug that can be pulled or some government order that can come in to seize funds. So we specifically want to build Union in a way that indeed like that will be possible, but also make sure that anyone could keep operating Union. So one part is generate CKPs to replace oracles. Right now, I think like 99.9% of all CKPs are generated by us. So that's our like in-house relayer that runs it. Looking to expand it now, like use proving markets. That way you decentralize the generation of CKPs. The model we have with Union here, I think resembles what you guys do with Lava, where even though it's like not an official marketplace, it's a sort of marketplace that creates itself. In the case of Union, like if you perform a transfer, you get money. So implicitly, like relayers race against each other to try to.
We can make it really trustless. We provide kind of the reliability, and we're turning the raw block base into like seamless and variable cross chain experience. I think it's a cool product that can be built out of this podcast.
Well, for us, we have 2 big products that we want to launch this year. One is client-side proving. So that means effectively that we use like a web GPU and the browser APIs to access the GPU to generate a ZKP in the user's browser itself. That removes like us needing to have a relayer in between it all. And then the next stage on top of that is private bridging. So because we like aggregate all block headers into like kind of a single global asynchronous state route, you can effectively mix all the funds that go in there. So you can hide effectively like what's the destination chain, what's the amount, etc., and have a private bridging protocol. And so far that doesn't exist yet. Like you can't really do that on a cross or like any intent-based protocol, because with intent-based bridges, your browser does like a request for quote type protocol with traders on the backend, right? And kind of shoots out an order and goes, hey, who could fill for me 50 USD going from Ethereum to Solana, right? And the solver will go, all right, I'll do that for a $1 fee, and then settles it for you. And with like layer 0 and Wormhole, they don't like actually operate on block headers or on the consensus itself. So like every single route is like technically fully individual. Every single transfer is like individually verified, and it's just like verifying signatures. So you don't really have like the mixing going on. But the hardest part with actually doing the private bridging is, what do you do when a user doesn't have like funds for gas on the destination side, right? Because in the end, someone will need to pay for that initial computation. So it's like, once again, combining like a whole bunch of infra, because it's like the browser will need to fetch much more data, obviously, something our relayer normally does to construct the proofs. And we kind of need to figure out, depending on the chain itself, like how can we fund the transfer? So on the Ethereum side,
What about estimation in advance? Just you can lock in this amount of funds, and worst case, you always send it back to the user. It's not the best UX, but
the problem is you kind of like if the user has nothing on the destination side, there's nothing to pay gas with. So on the Ethereum side, you have like the paymaster stuff right now, right? Where technically like you can mark a contract as being willing to like front the initial gas cost, because in the end, with the bridge operation, you do have the money, right? If you can get that first transfer in, then in the end the user ends up with $100 or whatever, and then you can swap that on a local DEX to pay for the gas. So as long as you can get the execution started and rolling, you'll be good. And so that right now for us, like with the theoretical work done on private bridging, now it almost becomes a like annoying engineering infrastructure issue, where it's like, okay, depending on the chain, which tools do we have available to actually make this feasible and possible? Yeah, that's something I'm be very, very excited about. I see like private bridging is kind of the final missing piece. Like trustless bridging is cool, but for a user, like there's no meaningful UX difference between that and using a centralized bridge until a bridge check happens. I think private.
What do you think? What do you think are the primary what are the use cases that are unlocked by private, not just trustless like bridging, in your opinion?
So right now, I think if we are LARPing about like moving banking on chain, etc., right? Like we do actually need like private stablecoin transfers. I think that's like the next big unlock to truly do neo banks on chain for regular users. So we see like Zama, Archium and Co, right? Like all heavily invest in being able to do private stablecoins. Next thing is now we have a bunch of like stablecoin chains, right? So bridging in between them as a user, you ideally wants to do private as well. And we even have it right now when like someone observes like Wintermute's wallet sending 200 million from, I know, Solana to BNB, right? Everyone is going to scream, oh, it's a Chinese altcoin season, etc. You basically tell the market like what your big positions are. And if you kind of compare like for the traditional like clearing settlement space, doing a 200 million US dollar transfer isn't that much at all. For crypto, a bridge operation like that would be absolutely massive. And like 100 Twitter accounts would all explode with something big is happening. So I actually think like the first use case really is what if you are like a bigger financial player, like an exchange or something, and you're basically doing rebalancing across chains, and you don't want to actually let like the entire world know that you're taking up these positions, or you're a big market maker and you want to move from hyperliquid to Ester because you actually do think, right, that the newer one is more bullish. You want to move to lighter, and you don't want to let everyone know that you're doing that. That's at least for me, I think the initial unlock. But for me as well, by the way, like if I could do a private bridge and just pay like $1 more to make my transfer private, I would probably do that by default. I have kind of this idea, well, like if you don't need to make it public, then ideally don't. I feel that also just leads to
no,
more.
So I fully agree with that take actually, and like one of the things that like pisses me off the most is like people's like, canned answer of like, oh, I have nothing to hide. Like, fuck that. Like, you don't need to have something to hide to care about privacy. Privacy is like, kind of like a public good. Actually, it's like a human right. I'm impressed by the fact that like, clearly you've researched your topic because like, you were able to answer the question without saying, oh, I just don't want the IRS to see where I put my money.
It's like the thing we mentioned privacy, and people think, oh, you're hiding something. And it's almost for me like, no, it's more about like execution protection nowadays in crypto, right? Like if you don't
want to get front end, like, it makes a lot of sense.
Right. From that perspective, it's almost required. And we actually like, so technically, if you're building MEV type software right now, like Union is still vulnerable to it because we just kind of blind sent our ZKPs to smart contracts. We spent like, let's say like 10 cents generating each ZKP on hardware, and then we make some revenue on the bridge transfer itself. Technically, even that is vulnerable right now. You could like observe the mempool, see, okay, the next
take the proof and
ZKP,
just like submit it like
and
faster.
just grab it and resubmit it with a slightly higher fee, and then you would be like actually like
the second business idea to build right off this stream.
Immediately starts doing it. Delays our next feature by a month.
Guys at home, don't take ideas. It's all.
Yeah, we actually in our design originally we're like, oh yeah, shit, you can indeed truly do that. You can just observe this in the mempool and you can steal the work of other provers. And I think technically, like with like Succinct and Boundless, they spent quite a lot of effort. Like if you read their white papers, that's technically what their white papers are about. Like how do we prevent someone from work stealing here in the proof generation. So that's for
How
me.
do they go about it?
Basically,
Succinctly.
they have their own network. They do like a type of auction. They include, I think, some metadata in the proof that's being generated for that auction specifically, as it counts down, and that way, like your work doesn't go away. But I still have a hunch, but I'm not exactly sure. I still wonder if you could, because specifically like Risk Zero's VM is like true zero knowledge. Like you can't actually figure out like what the inputs were that went in. So since SP1, I'm not sure if they fixed it, but for like a year and a half wasn't really zero knowledge in the sense that the private inputs remain private. It more had only the like compression character. So like you compute gets compressed, but you can't figure out what the original like inputs were. And so I wonder if like that left the vulnerability open for you to do a certain work stealing. It's quite interesting. I should actually check that out after this and see if I could run like an MEV prover on succinct network.
to go and work steal from all of the succinct provers.
Yeah, exactly.
That's nice. That's fun.
But yeah, that's kind of on our side what we see a lot. So it kind of involves exactly what you guys are doing at Lab, or at least like figuring out how to stitch that together. In our experience, like user devices also vary so much in quality. Obviously, PreTG with a bunch of farmers, Kiwi browser, etc. was the stuff they were running. So we spent so much time trying to figure out how to even get data on these like severely handicapped little machines that can only handle like, I don't know, a few hundred kilobytes per second in download speeds. I see we are running towards the end of this cast. I'm not sure if you guys like have a hard stop. I kind of need to hop into some next meeting soon. So maybe some closing words on the future of pool infra. I already heard it for like time travel market making on the chain. What's next for Lava?
Yeah, so it's until the end of the year. It's really exciting time. Deploying more the smart router. Look at more use cases for that. Also, we're coming up with we're building a new public RPC pool, exactly like for Union, but that's gonna orchestrate exactly the smart router, the layer that we spoke before, but that's gonna orchestrate all the existing endpoints if the chain is already live for some time. So yeah, that's a very cool product that came out of many conversation in last week in Token. So that's one. Yeah, we also, I heard some voices in the community about improvements, how we can do improvements to the scoring and pairing mechanism, and it's something that shows how how the protocol is upgrading to the next level. Like it's based on 1.5 years of mainnet, and now by metrics, by real feedback that we gather from application, from the providers, there is some upgrades that has to be done. This is the way to improve. So also this is something that I'm super excited about. Yeah, and working with you guys.
Very cool. Yeah, we'll be the first to integrate it, sir.
Cool.
And on the Neutron side, besides time travel market making,
besides
really cool, like probably a feature that took like the same amount of engineering to develop. I saw you guys did a whole bunch
actually
of like,
not. No, so like we have a very product first like kind of like a mentality. Basically, like we try and like keep as much as possible of our development to like producing meaningful changes for like the outcomes the users get, basically. So like saving people money and that kind of stuff, right? And so yeah, actually, like the what's going to be happening on Neutron is like, I think it's less about the features that power this, but more so like I think right now we are unlocking like real yield on Bitcoin. So if you are, if you're in the industry, you probably don't mind having some Bitcoin around, right? You probably have some right now. If you're looking for that to not just like sit in a wallet, but are looking to make money with it, like consistently, potentially like, be able to finance your lifestyle. Let's say you have Bitcoin, you don't want to sell it. You can not only borrow like dollars and like use that to pay your rent or something. Or you can, like basically like go and like earn even on top of that with Neutron and like Bitcoin Summer and stuff and all the campaign that we've done, right? Like our point is like we're trying to unlock two things, which is real, sustainable, scalable like sources of yield on Bitcoin, which I think is up until recently was an unsolved problem in crypto. And then two, enabling all of the flexibility that DeFi provides onto that asset, right? So that Bitcoin stops being just about like, oh, I can buy and sell it, and it becomes this thing whereby let's say I am all about like maximizing yield. I'm very bullish on Bitcoin. I want to acquire as much as possible before the next cycle. I can go and like take on leverage in correlated in Bitcoin, earn 80% APR or something, double my stack before the next bull run, which will set me up very nicely, right? Or maybe I'm very conservative, right? I am so like putting all of my funds into this, like I don't want that to like, I want to minimize the risk and whatever, and I want to just like earn a consistent like 3 or 4% APR on Bitcoin, right? These kinds of things are kind of like the two sides of leverage looping, which is like the largest trade in DeFi, really. That just it's happening on ETH, it's happening on Solana, it's happening on like all of these assets. It's not happening on Bitcoin because the yield part was just like not fixed before. And so now that we've so like got the first piece, the second piece of the puzzle is unlocking like leverage looping for and just like DeFi in general for Bitcoin. And so that's really what we're focused on. So check it out if you're interested. If you have some Bitcoin lying around, it's been good fun.
Awesome. Yeah. We have hopefully Oro pre-deposit vaults going live soon. So I think we're already talking with you guys on getting some of that on Neutron as well.
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much for coming on and educating me a little bit on kind of the frontier of tech here. Hope the community enjoyed as well. And for listeners, we'll be back on next week, and I'll be checking in, I think, once we have the smart router fully live and integrated on how well it goes.
Let's check the metrics.
Okay.
Thank you for the conversation.
All right.
Okay.
Thank you
Thanks
guys
for
so
having
much.
us.
Have a
Take
good
care.
one. Take care.